Okay, good day to all of you, and I also wish you all a happy new year. Now, previously we have done a couple of lessons on how to uh, run a one-way ANOVA and also how to do a two-way ANOVA. So when you have a two-way ANOVA, the study becomes what we call a factorial design or factorial arrangement. Now, today we are going to discuss about mixed factorial designs. Oh, usually what happens is, there are two major types of experimental designs depending on how you would want to design it. For example, if you use multiple groups, we call it a between group design. And at the same time, if you have the same group but you are testing them twice, then that's going to be considered as a within groups design. But what if someone wants to actually combine both of these? Now, sometimes when you search about this online, when you type mixed research designs, uh, usually they might say that's a combination of qualitative and quantitative. No, we are not talking about that here. We are talking about a mixture of between group and the within group design in the same study. One could also say it's kind of like a juxtaposition of both of those approaches, within and between. Now, today, what we are going to do is we are going to understand more about its application and also interpretation. Now, we will also be utilizing a few statistical tests. So today, the focus is not necessarily on the statistical test, but to understand how the mixed factorial design works. And then subsequently, we want to discuss how exactly we are going to go ahead and analyze as well. Now, if you followed my lesson on one-way ANOVA, I discussed a simple study where flashiness of a casino and the dollars spent was analyzed. So if you are very new to ANOVAs, I would encourage you to go and watch that first. Or if you have forgotten how to do it, then I would still encourage you to go ahead and watch that. And today we are going to add another layer to this lesson, or the layer to that particular scenario that we have discussed. So let's take a moment to read this scenario so that it will make things clear to you as to what we are going to do today. Now it says here, Wail and Mahmoud are university students. They are working on a project to understand the impact of the flashiness of a casino and the subsequent willingness of individuals to spend money. Now I italicize this and I also underline this because this is the overall objective of this study. If you read the first few lines, this is exactly the main objective. But now let's read a little bit further because I have given another objective as well, which is exactly why we need to use a mixed factorial design. So let's read this. So with the help of their class instructor, flashiness of the casinos were identified. Simple American Indian and cowboy casinos are considered the least flashy, while casinos in the suburban towns are considered moderate flashy. The flashiest ones considered are the big casinos in cities such as Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and Baltimore. However, with the recent rise of inflation, now if you watch my previous video on one-way ANOVAs, this section was not included. Now I recently introduced this. It says, however, with the recent rise of inflation, Weil and Mahmoud noticed that the spending habits were much different among people a couple of years ago. This could be a very reasonable claim. Why? Because we know during the inflation times of inflation, people usually reduce their expenses. Why? Because things are getting more and more expensive. So as a result, the two researchers now are interested in investigating differences in spending before and after the inflation as well. Now, here we have two objectives. One is to see the impact of flashiness of a casino on spending, but at the same time, they want to understand how this has impacted by the inflation. So, a pre and a post analysis as well. So, when you analyze the flashiness from the least to the moderate to the highest, and how those categorization differs in the spending, that would be a between subjects design. But when you want to do the analysis for the pre and the post, it becomes a within groups design. So the study consists of 36 participants. Their average monthly spending, both pre and post inflation, was recorded using the digitized logs maintained at respective casinos. Now, we have some understanding about what we are going to do here. So let's take a moment to understand more about what this entire thing is all about. This is a very simple study. I wanted to make it simple because I wanted everyone to understand the purpose of doing a mixed factorial design. If you have a bigger study with bigger variables and more phases of testing and all of that, then you can understand how much of work you need to put into get your data analyzed once you do this. So this is the simplest that you can get. So here, let's ask this question. Is this a between group study or a within group study? Now, if you notice this particular objective, the first one, impact of the flashiness of a casino and the subsequent willingness of the individuals to spend, we have three types of casinos, and we are going to see the average spending differs from one to another. That is a comparison of three groups, so then it becomes a between group design. I will explain it further when we go through our data set. And the same uh, objective is reflected here as well. For example, here I have mentioned CCC means Cowboy Country Casino. DSC means Del Suburban Casino. Those are the moderate ones. Here, Trump Taj Mahal, those are the bigger, large scale casinos. Now, if you just compare these three groups at any given time, what you are doing is you are comparing the averages to see whether the average spend shows any significant differences. If you do that, that's a between groups design. Why? Because you have three groups and you just want to compare them. That's it. But here now I have introduced a second objective, that is to investigate the differences in spending before and after the inflation. So for example, now here I have data, one that supports pre-inflation. I'm going to just highlight this or bold this, and then here I have post-inflation. Now, if I need to understand the mean expenses for Cowboy Country casinos and then Del Suburban casinos and Trump Taj Mahal in the pre-inflation times, which means a comparison of these three casinos in the pre-inflation times, that is still a between groups design. If I want to compare these three groups, so here MCCP1 means mean of CCCC, P1 stands for phase 1. You can name it in any way that you would like, no issues. So there is that. And then post-inflation, once again, I have done the same thing as well. Here you have again three groups that you can compare. Now that is if you consider analyzing pre-inflation three groups at any given time and then the post-inflation group at any given time. But what if I need to compare the differences of the mean spend before and after the inflation just for the Cowboy Country casinos, which means this and this. I'm going to compare the mean expenses for the Cowboy Country casinos before the inflation and after the inflation. So that would be a within group design. That's a, it has two types of what do you call it? Here you would be measuring the same group twice. If you measure the same group thrice, you can go for a repeated measures ANOVA. If not, you can go for a what do you call a repeated measures t-test, because here you have the same casino, but you are going to measure them twice. If you want to measure this and this, which means mean expenses of Dell suburban casinos before and after inflation, that would be a repeated measures t-test as well. It would be the same for this one as well. Now, when you put it like this, it is very easy to understand what exactly we want to do. We want to compare these three during the pre-inflation time and the post-inflation time. But at the same time, we want to compare the pre and post inflation differences for each of the casino types as well, like this. So this is exactly what we want to do. Now, when you attempt something like this, it would be really good if you can spend some time to visualize what you would want to compare. A lot of students don't do this, and when you don't do it, it is very difficult to understand what you want to exactly go ahead and analyze. So what I usually do is I spend some time getting my data all visualized like this in a nice table, so I know what exactly I need to go ahead and compare. You may have slightly different like variations of this as well. For example, pre-inflation and post-inflation, you can keep it on the left side. That's also all right. You don't need to keep it as separate. Uh, what do you call like different rows in this? So uh, now that we understand what we need to do, let's go ahead and observe our data set. And at the same time, here we can understand how many groups are going to be there as well. Now, if you notice, here we have only 3 groups. The only difference is if you just do a normal one-way ANOVA, you are measuring them only once. Since here we have a pre and a post uh, type of a measurement as well, we have the same 3 groups, but we'll be measuring them twice. So this is the first instance of measurement. This is the second instance of measurement. Pre and post, but just 3 groups. Now let's take a moment to observe the data set. Here's my data set. Now, usually data sets are not given like this. But here, I have deliberately given the data like this so that we have to spend some time converting this data to SPSS or Jamovi friendly method. Now, this is the pre-inflation data. Let's say you collected this data from let's say casino or somewhere like that. They might not give you the data in the way that you would desire. So we have to get the data either the way that we like. Let's say your research assistant collected the data. The assistant has not collected the data in a SPSS friendly format. Now here we have 36 people altogether. These 36 people, 12 belongs to Cowboy Country Casino, 12 belongs to Dell Suburban Casino, and 12 belongs to Trump Taj Mahal. Cowboy is the least flashy, Dell's is the moderate flashy, and the Taj Mahal is the flashiest. Now, I need to transfer this pre-inflation data into Jamovi first. But before I transfer this to Jamovi, I'm going to transfer this to Excel. Now, the reason is I am more familiar with doing edits and all of that to my data set in Excel rather than doing it in Jamovi. Jamovi also has uh, options to filter your data and all of that, but I still haven't tried them. SPSS has a great method to filter out your data, but I don't have SPSS in my Mac computer here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just transfer this to Excel, and like I always tell, my objective is to tell simpler methods, and they might take a couple of more steps, but it's very simple. Anyone can do this. It's nothing complicated. So here I have transferred my data, but I'll show you how exactly I did. First, I need to have one column to indicate what casinos data I am going to include, because when you transfer data to Jamovi or SPSS, you need to indicate this in variables. So this is one variable. Type of casino is one variable. I have 12 people for the first casino, 12 people for the second, and 12 people for the third. So here under casinos, one represents Cowboy Country Casino. So I have 12 rows dedicated for Cowboy Country Casinos. One is the value that I use to indicate Cowboy Casino. So when I transfer my data to Jamovi, I can indicate it as such. Okay. And then I have added my pre-inflation data to here, this column right in front of it. So this is the first person. This is his average spend on Cowboy Country Casino before the inflation, and the same for the others as well. On the third column, post-inflation, I have given the post-inflation scores for the same set of individuals as well, like this. When you want to do a pre-post analysis, for the pre, well, you have to create one continuous variable. For post, you have to create another continuous variable. That is exactly how you would add data. So for the pre, you have to have one column. For the post, you have to have one column. And this is your grouping variable. And I have done the same for Dell Suburban Casino. This is their pre expenses, which is this. And this is their post expenses, inflation. And I did the same for Trump Taj Mahal and, the pre and post inflation data as well. Now let's see how exactly we are going to transfer this to Jamovi. Now this is Jamovi. I have already transferred this data here, but let me show you how exactly I did. Now this is my first variable. I have named it as type of casino or flashiness, and the measure type here is nominal and data type is integer. Now here, if you click on this plus option, you can add values. So I indicated here something like this. One stands for cowboy, country, casino. And if you press OK, then this one will appear here just like this. One stands for cowboy, country, casino. Two stands for Dell Suburban Casino, and three stands for Trump Taj Mahal. Once you do that, you copy and paste all of this data into that column. For example, press the Shift, Control, and the downward arrow. It will select all your data here that belongs to your first variable, and then simply go ahead and paste. Once you paste your data, it will automatically appear like this. It has the value that you have identified. Since we have defined our values here, in front of number 3, it will say Trump Taj Mahal. In front of number 2, it will say Dell Suburban. In front of number 1, it will say Cowboy Casinos. Now your first variable you have already entered. Now a little bit of the job is done. Pre-inflation. Here this is a continuous variable, so you don't need to add any values. So I have mentioned dollars spent by average player. Now I have that information as well. Give a shift command and control and a downward arrow and select all your data and copy and paste here. Now I have pasted this, so I'm not going to do anything again here. But you get my point. And you do the same for post-inflation as well. Now we have our data all included here. Now I'm going to minimize my Excel dataset because I actually don't need it. Now, here we have our dataset all transferred. And if you have any difficulty understanding how we have transferred this data, I have two videos made for one-way ANOVAs and two-way ANOVAs. You can go ahead and watch those videos. If not, you can simply rewind back and watch this as well, and you will understand how exactly we have done. Now we don't need to be bothered about the dataset I have given here, but we have something else to do. Now that we have discussed our study, before we proceed with analysis, I have to come up with hypotheses to analyze my data. Now I have two objectives. One is to see how the type of casino impacts, or the type of flashiness impacts dollar spends. Now, here I have developed two hypotheses for that because I have now data, see here, from the pre-inflation time and also from the post-inflation times. So I am going to develop two hypotheses to assess my first objective, that is impact of flashiness of a casino and the subsequent willingness of the individuals to spend money. This is my first hypothesis. Degree of flashiness has a statistically significant impact on dollars spent during pre-inflation times. So this is one way of writing your hypothesis, but technically what we want to do is a comparison of the three groups. That is exactly what we are planning on doing here. So here I have cowboy country casinos. First time, the P1 stands for the first pre-inflation measurement, is not equal to Dell Suburban Casinos. It's not equal to Trump Taj Mahal Casino. So what we are basically doing is we are hypothesizing the average spent by people in each one of these is not equal to one another. So if the differences are statistically significant, then we can go ahead and approve our hypothesis. And The same I have done for the post-inflation times as well. Degree of flashiness and statistically significant impact on dollars spent during post-inflation times. So this is that alternative method of writing, which pretty much states that here, unlike P1, now this is P2 because P2 is the post-inflation measurement. The three groups are not equal to one another. And to assess our objective 2, that is investigating differences in spending before and after, for that I have developed 3 hypotheses. Pre and post comparison of cowboy country casino. It says inflation has a statistically significant effect on how much people spend on cowboy country casinos. Have done the same for the Dell suburban casinos as well, and has done the same for the Trump Taj Mahal as well. So basically, inflation has impact on how much people spend in a particular place. Or if not, you can actually combine all of these three together, these three, and develop one saying inflation has a statistically significant effect on how people spend. But then it will not be very specific. So that is also there. But I think doing it separately gets our purpose nicely delivered. So we don't need to overburden ourselves. So let's understand our IVs and DVs. One of our first independent variables is flashiness or the type of casino. We have 3, it's a variable with 2 different groups. We have our next one, that is inflation, pre and post inflation. This is not necessarily 2 groups, 2 types of measurement. This is exactly why we have this mixed factorial arrangement. Now, of course, if you have another factor here, then this will become very big. Now, we haven't included any big, like a secondary independent factor for the between groups design. If you do that, suddenly there would be uh, a bigger number of groups and all of that. But here, without going for a what do you call uh, a second independent variable, I have just focused on one independent variable here, just for the between one. But for the within, we have another independent variable as well, that is pre-inflation and post-inflation. So technically, we have 2 independent variables. Hence, I am considering this as a mixed factorial design. But if you want a second factor for your between groups design or the between groups, you can add another one as well, no issues. Okay, now we went through our data set as well. Now let's try to come up with answers for these ones. First, what's the total N of this study? Now we know we have 36 individuals. It's just that we have measured them twice, pre-inflation, post-inflation. Now here's the first analysis that I need to do. How much dollars are spent by the average casino player in the total sample? Cowboy Country Casino, Dell's Urban Casino, and Trump Taj Mahal during the pre-inflation. Produce your findings in a table. Now, let's click on exploration option. Let's go to descriptives. I am going to first select pre-inflation. When you select and transfer pre-inflation to the variable site, it gives the descriptives of the entire sample, the total sample without any categorization. I'm going to demonstrate my variable across rows. So I think this will make things more readable. And I need to get some statistics. I don't need any missing values because we don't have any missing values here. I am okay with the mean. I don't need my median. So I'm going to remove that as well. Standard deviation is good. If you need, you can get minimum, maximum. You can get variance as well. So I'm not going to take that here. I'm going to get range. And if you want skewness or kurtosis, you can get those here, and Shapiro-Wilk you can get here. But this is for the overall sample, so I actually don't need it here. So I'm going to just keep it like this. If you want post-inflation also added here, these are for the total sample. So I'm going to just copy and paste this data. Because if I'm not mistaken, my second question also says how much dollars are spent by the average casino player in the total sample, Cowboy Country Casino, Dale Suburban, and Trump Taj Mahal during the post-inflation time. So produce your findings in a table. So maybe I'll give these findings separately. So I'm going to first get the pre-inflation data. So you can right click like this and then select copy and then paste your data. I'm going to paste my data here because this will help me interpret my findings when I have the discussion with you guys. Okay. You can format this as well to make it more APA friendly by making this Times New Roman and also font size 12. Times New Roman and font size is 12. And you can later do other kinds of formatting, moving it to uh, move it around, like this, so that it would fit the overall formatting structures of your written document. So that is something that you can always do. Now I have this for the overall sample pre-inflation. But now I need to split this by Cowboy Country Casino, Del Suburban Casino, and Trump Taj Mahal. So I'm going to get my type of casino here and then put it to the split by section here. See, now I have more descriptive data. Here I am going to add skewness and kurtosis as well, because if I need to analyze this data through a one-way ANOVA to assess my first hypothesis, I need to know about this as well, and also Shapiro-Wilk. Now, if you notice here, the means have changed. In the sense, you can see there's a clear increment in the spending. Cowboy is the least flash. It has a mean spend of 3,828. It has risen to a 4,700 in the Dell Suburban, and it has risen to a 18,000 in Trump Taj Mahal. The ranges are given here, minimums and the maximums are given here. Let's go through skewness and kurtosis data. Now, these values should be closer to 0 to indicate that the data is not skewed. But if you notice here, the second one, Dell Suburban Casino, it indicates a positive skewness value, which means the data tends to have a bit of a tail to the right side. So that's the positive skewness. And at the same time, if you look at kurtosis, the kurtosis also, most of the values are closer to 0, but the kurtosis value for what do you call Del Suburban Casino is 1.95, which means a positive value indicates a bit of a narrower data distribution. Narrower data distribution makes extreme values more likely. Okay. And here we have Shapiro-Wilk as well. You can clearly see Shapiro-Wilk has not been violated for uh, country casinos and also Trump Taj Mahals, but for the second and Dale Suburban, the Shapiro-Wilk also indicates some violation. So, since one of the groups has violated, at this stage, I can't say whether I'm going to go with the one-way ANOVA or a non-parametric equivalent. So what we are going to do is we are going to just copy and paste this data so that we can later decide what exactly we need to do. So I'm going to copy and paste this data here. Now, if you have a bigger table, usually this happens. So what I am going to do is I am going to remove some of this information so that I don't need to put all of these here. Maybe minimum, maximum, and range. I am going to take all of those out so that I can have a simple table. Maybe I will take skewness kurtosis out as well. Just keep Shapiro-Wilk. You can decide how exactly you would want to do. There are no hard and fast rules as to how you are going to do it. But I just wanted to make sure that I have a smaller table. This is exactly why I removed some. Okay, like this. Okay, I'll keep it like this. And I'm going to change again the font type and also the font size. Okay. Now this is that data. Now we need the same data for the post-inflation period as well. So now I'm going to take this out. and then put post inflation to the variable this one. So previously I had obtained range minimum maximum as well. So I'm going to just get the same for here, so that there would be some kind of consistency in how I have obtained my information. Post inflation, you can see the mean is 8,918, and then here we have maximum, minimum, and all of that. So I'm going to just copy and paste this data here. Now you can actually analyze this data a little bit. Let's do that actually. The mean expenses in the pre-inflation time is 9,034 on an average for all 36 participants. You can see that it has come down to 8,918. Not a big difference for the entire sample. If you take the entire sample of 36, there's a noticeable, not very noticeable, but there's a slight difference because 9,000 something has come to 8,900. But these differences could be more pronounced between different categories, which is exactly what we need to find later. But before we go through that, I'm going to now split this by type of casino here once again. I'm going to remove minimum maximum and just have Shapiro wave like this. Now here also, if you notice, the means share noticeable changes from Cowboy to Dells to Trump Taj Mahal. This is post-inflation data. Once again, compared to the previous times, the skewness kurtosis values are pretty okay. But still, for the second group, Dells Submarine Casino, the Shapiro wheel indicates a violation. But when you want to decide whether data is normally distributed or not, you can go with skewness kurtosis values. You can visually inspect it using histograms, PP plots, and also you can consider Shapiro wheel. So you have to consider a few things here. Don't just depend upon the Shapiro wheel test. Okay, so I'm going to just copy and paste this data as well. Okay, now I'm going to format this again. Okay, now some of the descriptive analysis I have, already completed. Now you can actually further, format these as well. Now previously also I told you don't need to keep these number ones, number twos, and all of that. This is just for us to identify, but for your report, if you make a report out of this, you don't need to include this. Okay, like this. So this is very clear. If you think your tables are taking too much of space, maybe you can reduce the font size a little bit. Maybe let's make it a 10 so that we don't eat up most of the space. But for APA, there would be specific requirements as to what the font size should be. So you can go through the APA 7th edition to see how exactly you need to get that job done. Okay, likewise. Now we have done our descriptive analysis. Right. So let's go to the next question here. How much dollars are spent by average cowboy casino player before and after inflation? Now, this is something that we have to specifically find in our within group analysis. I'm not going to touch it here because we had to do some changes to the way that we have entered this data for us to do this analysis. So I'm going to just keep it like that. Let's first go ahead with our between group analysis. What are the parametric tests that are suitable for testing each hypothesis? What is my first hypothesis? First hypothesis is to check degree of flashiness has a statistical significant impact on dollars spent during pre-inflation times. Hypothesis 2 is post-inflation times. So I have three groups in each. Hypothesis 1 can be tested using a one-way ANOVA. So between group one-way ANOVA. Hypothesis 2 can be tested using a one-way ANOVA as well. So conduct normality testing and homogeneity of variance testing before testing each hypothesis. So let's first try to get these two hypotheses assessed. We can check other hypotheses later, but let's just focus on this, okay? Okay, now how are we going to do this? Now I need to run a one-way ANOVA, so I'm going to click on Analyze, ANOVA, one-way ANOVA. I need to first analyze pre-inflation and then grouping variable is type of casino. I am going to first go for my homogeneity test. Now I know my normality is anyways, it is violating. Homogeneity test also, there is a noticeable violation. The p-value is less than 0.05 indicating no homogeneity of variances. So I am going to copy and paste this data. This hypothesis 1. Homogeneity of variance. It's violating, so I'm not going to do anything here. And if you look at the one-way ANOVA table here, you can clearly see this is statistically significant. During the pre-inflation times, the average spend of money based on the degree of flashiness, because degree of flashiness is type of casino, although I have written it as type of casino, each type of casino stands for a degree of flashiness. So the degree of flashiness, yes, it has made the average spending by individuals in each one of these casinos statistically, different in a statistically significant manner. So this p-value is less than 0.05. What it means is these differences, 3,000 to 4,000, 4,000, 19,000 are significantly different. So based on how we have argued, this difference has come from the degree of flashiness. Now, here I am going to copy this data and put it here because this is my, I'm going to write one-way analysis of variance. Yeah, no, like this. Now I can do a post hoc test as well. Here, unequal variances, you can click on Games Howell and then mean differences, report significance, give the test results, T and degrees of freedom, and flag significant comparisons. If you notice here, this is my post hoc. Here we have the three type of casinos, kind of like a matrix here. Here we have again, as our column headers also, we have our three casinos. You can see Cowboy Country Casinos and Del Urban Casinos has a difference of 914, but this difference is not statistically significant. But Cowboy and Trump Taj Mahal and Del Suburban and Trump Taj Mahal, these are all statistically significant differences. There's this one asterisk kind of mark given here. It stands for significance set confidence interval confidence interval 95, which means alpha 0.05. So the ANOVA is significant during the pre-inflation times, but based on this information, Cowboy Country and Del Urban Casino, although there's a descriptively noticeable difference, it is not statistically significant. But the differences between Country Casino and Trump Taj Mahal and Del Urban Casino and Trump Taj Mahal, they are descriptively also different, statistically also significant. So we can, include that table here as well. So it will eat up some space, but can just keep it here. Maybe I'll try to make it smaller. Give me a second. Yeah, I think that's the. So this is the table. Now see, this is for the pre-inflation time. Hypothesis 1. This is pre-inflation between groups comparison. Okay, like this. Maybe I'll bold this a little bit so that anyone who would be going through this can easily understand what I have done. Okay, now that is clear. Now we need to do the testing for hypothesis 2. Now, hypothesis 1 is accepted. This is accepted. So I'm going to color it in red because now we have accepted this. No issues. Now we need to go ahead and test our hypothesis 2. Hypothesis 2, that is post-inflation. This is also between group comparison. Now, we already have obtained our descriptives, so I'm not going to obtain the descriptives again because see here we have done our descriptives pre and post. That is already available, so we don't need to do it again. So let's get on with our analysis. So take this pre-inflation out, put post-inflation instead. Post-inflation, once again, this is statistically significant and homogeneity of variance is not available. It is violated. Why p-value is less than 0.01. So first I'm going to copy and paste this and keep it here because that is what we did previously as well. Homogeneity of variance. Homogeneity of variance. Now, the importance of getting this data included like this is so that when you want to analyze, you can later go ahead and put it in the appropriate places and analyze your data. But make sure you keep it methodically with you so that you can do your reporting and all of that later, do all the formatting and all of that. Okay. Now, this is that homogeneity of variance. And then one-way ANOVA, post-inflation, this is also statistically significant. P-value is less than 0.02. Here we have selected Welsh because variances, it doesn't assume equal variances. So we have gone with that. If you assume equal variances, then you can go with Fisher's. Still, it is not still it is statistically significant. So I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to go ahead with the Welsh output. Okay. One-way ANOVA. Once again, I'm going to just copy and paste it here. And copy and paste the table. So copy and paste this table. Okay, so our one-way ANOVA is also done. Now, we have our post-hoc here. If you notice, once again, the same thing. Cowboy Country Casino and Del Suburban, there's a descriptive difference of 1531, but not statistically significant. But Cowboy Country Casino and Trump Taj Mahal, that is very significant. In fact, it is significant at confidence interval 99 alpha 0.01. So that's very significant. And then Del Suburban Casino and Trump Taj Mahal is also statistically significant. So we are going to include that as well. Like this here. Now we have our basic analysis all done. Okay. Now here once again, if you want to format your tables, you can do a little bit of formatting like this because we don't need this 1, 2, 3, these kind of numbers here. Because in a moment I will show you how to write the research report from this as well, so that you can have a better understanding about how this data is actually interpreted as well, because we want to make sure that we understand how exactly the interpretations are also done as well. Okay, so like this, we will remove these guys. Okay, and we need to make sure these are font formatted as well. Times New Roman. Since these tables are bigger, I'm not going to what do you call increase the size of the fonts. It is given as 9, so I'm going to just keep it as it is. Okay. Now, the first two hypotheses are all accepted. So let's go ahead and indicate that our second hypothesis is also accepted. This one, hypothesis 2, that is also accepted. Okay, now here comes the slightly difficult part. Now I need to first measure how much dollars are spent by the average cowboy country casino player before and after inflation. Now let's go to this data section. Now I have an Excel file. Excel file is right here. Here in this Excel file, I have all the data for the country casinos, Dell suburban casinos, and also, Trump casino players. Now I am going to remove data that belongs to Dell Suburban Casino and Trump Taj Mahal because I need only the 12 participant data for the pre-inflation and post-inflation of cowboy country casinos to go ahead and run my analysis because I need to first find descriptive analysis, okay, for pre-inflation and post-inflation. Now you might ask why exactly I did this because I can do this with the other information as well, with the other data from the other two as well. Yes, I can definitely do that, but I need to immediately run my uh, hypothesis testing as well. So that is why I removed the rest of the data. But if you want, you can actually do the descriptive analysis first, and then you can do the rest as well. Now, just for cowboy casinos, if you notice, the mean is 3,828 in the pre-inflation. We see a noticeable reduction in this mean to a 3,011. And let's get skewness and kurtosis values for this as well. Seems to be pretty normal. If you take Shapiro-Wilk, yes, once again, pretty normally distributed. But this is some very important information. This is our first descriptive information for pre and post data for cowboy country casinos. On an average, this is exactly how they have spent. So I'm going to just copy and paste this information because it's important. Okay, like this. And now I need to do the same for Dell Suburban Casino as well. But before I go ahead and do that, I am going to test my third hypothesis. My third hypothesis is inflation has a statistically significant effect on how much people spend on country casinos. So I'm going to see whether the difference of this 3,828 and 3,011 is significantly different from one another. Now here, this is going to be my third hypothesis. This is going to be my third hypothesis. So let me put it here. Hypothesis 3, pre versus post inflation for cowboy country casinos. Now this is not between group, this is within group comparison because it's the same group that we are comparing before and after. So for this, I have only one before and after, so I need to do a repeated measures t-test. So independent samples, paired sample, one sample. So I'm going to go with paired sample t-test. What is my paired sample? Pre-inflation and post-inflation. You will notice this is how we have paired. That's why we had to enter data in a very specific manner here. Now, paired sample t-test, here pre and post inflation, they have done a student's t-test. Our averages are all okay. I think our normality is also fine. So yes, we can go with the student's t-test. And if you notice, this is statistically significant. So the mean difference of 3,800 to 3,011, that is statistically significant. And we can also find the effect size. Cohen's D, the difference is 0.8. So that's, I think, a very strong effect size as well. If you want, you can get some descriptives here, but I'm not going to go with those because whatever I need to have, I already have it here. So I'm going to just give this information here. This is exactly what I wanted. Okay. Now that information is all done. Now, hypothesis 3 is accepted. Hypothesis 3 is accepted. This is the dependent t-test for paired sample t-test. And the same has to be repeated for hypothesis 4 and hypothesis 5 as well. So I hope you would understand by now why exactly I'm considering this type of t-test for the hypothesis 3, 4, and 5. Now, hypothesis 1 is done, hypothesis 2 is done, hypothesis 3 is also done. Now, we need to find some more information here. How much dollars are spent by the average Dell suburban casino player before and after inflation? Now, let's go back to our data because here I have only cowboy data. So I am going to get my Excel and select all the Dell suburban data. I have properly defined my variables. So just a copy and paste here is going to get my job done. I'm going to select my appropriate columns and paste my data just like this. I already have done my analysis, so I don't need to again select everything. You can see on the right side, it automatically gets updated. Pre-inflation, post-inflation, the mean difference is, see, the mean mean spend was 4,700 during the pre-inflation time. It has reduced to 4,500 in the post-inflation for the Dell suburban casinos. And Shapiro-Wilk here, okay, that seems to be violating the what do you call the normality here. So in that case, I'm going to again go and see what exactly has happened here, which means I have to again redo this. Pre, post, edit like this. This table is important, so I'm going to just get this table first. And I'm going to copy it here. I hope you understand why I decided to copy and paste this data here. The reason is okay. The reason is these are descriptive information because we need to see how exactly the means have dropped from the pre-inflation to the post-inflation. But everything else is nicely presented here. We were testing the hypothesis. Now here, let's go and check the skewness and kurtosis as well. Let's go to analyze descriptives. I'm going to check pre and post inflation. We don't need the missing values. We don't need median, maximum, minimum. We don't need this, just the normality. Okay, see, the pre-inflation del suburban is pretty skewed. And I think even the kurtosis is slightly not normal, not closer to zero. And Shapiro will also indicate it's not normal. So what we can do is maybe we can go with the t-test paired sample. We can actually go with Wilcoxon rank instead of student's t. But if you notice, student t is also statistically significant. Wilcoxon rank is also significant, but I'm going to go with Wilcoxon rank. And then effect sizes can also be calculated through a point biserial correlation. So what it means is we have two categories, pre-inflation to post. So from pre to post, basically pre is numbered as 1 and then post is numbered as 2. And then we are going to see from 1 to 2 whether the plotted numbers in the scatter plot indicate some kind of a correlation. Usually the correlation has to be a perfect correlation like this or closer to 1 to indicate there's a noticeable effect. If it is closer to 0, then there is no noticeable effect. Yes. So this is statistically significant. The difference of 4,700 to 4,500 is statistically significant. And also the effect size is also uh, significant. So that is our hypothesis 4. So hypothesis 4, let's write that as well. Hypothesis 4, pre and post inflation for Del suburban casino within group comparison. This is our data. Like this. Okay. Now we need to do our fifth hypothesis as well. So I'm going to just write it here so that we can keep it. Hypothesis 5, pre and post for Trump Taj Mahal. Okay, but we need to do some descriptive analysis for that as well. So hypothesis 4 also accepted. So now we need to find how much dollars are spent on average in Taj Mahal players before and after inflation. So let's go to data. We don't need this data, so I'm going to go to my Excel. Now get the data that belongs to Trump Taj Mahal like this. Now I don't need this Excel data. I am going to close this. Get this data like this. I'm going to again analyze exploration descriptives, just pre and post inflation, because I don't need type of casino buy because I have only Trump Taj Mahal data here. I don't need this missing information. I don't need median. I don't need minimum maximum. I'm going to just straightway go to skewness, kurtosis, and Shapiro-Wilk. Now here, unlike the other two, you would notice pre-inflation to post-inflation, it has risen a little bit. In cowboy casinos, you see a reduction. In Del Urban Casino, you see a reduction from pre to post. But here you would see a slight increase. There could be a lot of reasons for that kind of increments. Now here, these are data that I have made up and included, but sometimes you would notice now the amount of money that on an average people have spent in cowboy casinos is very less. The amount people have spent in Del Urban is higher, but higher than cowboys, but then still very limited. But if you see the mean expenses here in Taj Mahal is significantly higher. So one could argue that these are rich individuals. So sometimes when inflation takes place, rich people tend to get more money in their hands. So maybe this could be a reason why there's a slight increment. Skewness and kurtosis is, I think, pretty okay, and Shapiro-Wilk is also okay, so nothing to worry about that. So I think we can go ahead and do a simple repeated measures t-test. but I'm going to just first put our descriptive calculations here. So we have previously obtained minimum and maximum, so I'm going to obtain that as well. If not, it will not be consistent. Like this. Okay. Done. Like this. Okay, so that is also done. So we now have all our descriptive data done. Here we have see pre-inflation data, post-inflation data divided by group, and within each group as well, pre-inflation, post-inflation data. So I think we have a good number of descriptives given here. Now, the thing is, when you write a research report out of this is going to get a little bit complicated than a normal one-way ANOVA or a two-way ANOVA, because here we have group comparisons and pre-post comparisons as well. And also we have our hypothesis 1 tested here. Hypothesis 1, pre-inflation between group comparison. And then here we have our hypothesis 2, post-inflation between group comparisons. We have that as well. And then we have hypothesis 3, pre versus post-inflation for CCC, hypothesis 4, pre and post-inflation DSC. And now the last one, I'm going to go for a t-test, paired sample, pre-inflation versus post-inflation, student t-test. Okay, now that is not significant. P-value is 0.120. I'm going to get the effect size as well. Effect size is okay, but coherence D indicates it has a moderate effect size, but this is not statistically significant. So hypothesis 5 is not accepted, but every other hypothesis is accepted. So here in this study, I am going to, I think I already have colored this. So H5 is not accepted, but everything else is accepted. So you can understand how exactly this is taking place, right? So hypothesis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are all our hypotheses tested. Now the bigger task is how exactly we are going to transfer this data to write a simple research report. Now these are our hypotheses. This first one is accepted, second one is accepted, third one is accepted, fourth one is accepted, the fifth one is not accepted. Inflation has a statistically significant effect on how much people spend on the flashiest casinos is not significant, which means inflation has nothing to do with how much people spend in flashiest casinos. Whether it has inflation or not doesn't really matter. In fact, it has risen slightly descriptively. But inflation has an impact on how people spend in Dell suburban casinos, how people spend in cowboy casinos. The degree of flashiness has something to do with spending in post-inflation times, and flashiness has something to do with how people spend in pre-inflation times as well. So this is the full analysis that we did today, and I think you can further comprehend how exact we are going to transfer this data and develop a report. So if you need to transfer this data and develop a report, it will take some time, and you also need to focus on what kind of information need to be specifically included in your research report, because you have quite a lot of group comparisons, pre-inflation time comparisons, post-inflation time comparisons, and then pre and post comparison for each type of casino here. And then we have hypothesis testing. So it has been preceded by homogeneity of variance testing and one-way ANOVA and post hoc. So we have that for two hypotheses. And then we have the third and the fourth and the fifth hypothesis comparison as well. So this is exactly how you would do a full data analysis for a mixed factorial design. So the basic idea here is you have to keep your analysis as simple as possible by designing a study with uh, a simple number of variables. Sometimes some students want to make bigger studies with bigger number of variables. So when you do that, of course, the studies are going to be slightly harder, and it makes it very difficult for students to really understand what they are going to do next. So I hope I was able to clarify how exactly uh, the data that belongs to a study where there's a between group design and a a within group design, like both of them are, if they are included together, how to analyze that data. I think I was able to clarify you how exactly it is done. My recommendation is start with one-way ANOVA video, go for the two-way ANOVA video, and then start with the mixed factorial design, and then it will be more clear to you like how exactly we do it and what exactly is the process. So please make sure to uh, comment if you have any questions, and I shall get back to you very. Okay. Now, we previously did a simple activity to go ahead and analyze a mixed factorial design. Now, here's what we are going to do next. Now, if you recall from our previous video, I demonstrated how to analyze, and then we copied and pasted the data to a separate Word document. Now, what I did was I actually did a little bit of editing here and then pasted the tables in the chronological order, or not in a chronological order, but in a very specific order. First, I included my descriptives, and then I included my inferential statistical procedures. I came up with a very simple title. Now, this might not be the most accurate title, but it says flashiness and average spend in casinos during pre and post inflation times. I'm going to actually include it in my header so that I can have more space to write this or include this results section as it is. So this is the results section. Now this is a APA formatted paper. I have given my what do you call the chapter title results, and first I'm going to start with descriptive analysis. If you want, you can include a little bit of narration here as well. But we'll come to that. But let's try to understand what are my tables. I have dozen or so tables. This table 1 is the pre-inflation average spent by all 36 participants during the pre-inflation time. This is the same divided by the type of casino or the flashiness. This is that table. And then we have post-inflation average spend once again. And then we have also the post-inflation average spend by the degree of flashiness. This is the post-inflation average spend for all 36, and this is for the same divided by the type of casino. And then this is the pre and post-inflation average spend by cowboy country casino players, pre and post for the Dell Suburban, pre and post for the Trump Taj Mahal players. And then from this, we have our inferential statistics. Hypothesis 1, I have named the hypothesis this time so that we can easily understand what we are going to do. Post hoc, hypothesis 2, hypothesis 3, hypothesis 4, and 5. So if you are going through this video now, I would, if you haven't gone through our previous video for mixed factorial design, please go through that because this study is in depth. I have explained it in depth in the previous video, including the data entry, analysis, and basic interpretation. So this is a subsequent video to show you how the reporting has to be done. So please watch that if you haven't, and then you can get back to this video. If not, this video might not make too much of sense, okay? So let's start with our results section. So this is how we need to do our reporting. Okay, let's start like this. The present study analyzed data from 36 casino players across three different players, let's say representing country casinos, suburban casinos, and urban casinos. Now, this is this has to be double space because this APA casinos. Uh, the type of casino is associated with. So let's assume that we have previously explained what these types of casinos are and how exactly the flashiness is associated with this in our method section. So we don't need to repeat it again here. So I'm going to just directly get to the point. The present study analyzed data from 36 casino players representing country casinos, and urban casinos. They are average spending patterns are analyzed and further compared between pre and post inflation times. So this is just to get a draft. I mean, you can further improve this, the write up and all of that when you do a improvement for your draft. But make sure you have grammar installed as well so that you can do the corrections as you go. First, the descriptive analysis, descriptive results are provided, or you could say in this chapter, in, in this chapter, if you're writing dissertation, something like this in this chapter, first descriptive results are provided and is which is followed by a series of inferential statistical analysis. Okay, now we have said what exactly we will be doing here. So I'm going to now start with my descriptive analysis. So let's start like this. The overall sample displayed an average expense of the overall sample displayed an average spending of. So this is the mean. In italics, I'm going to write M. This is dollars. So 9,034. $9,034. You want, you can give standard deviation here as well, like this. Standard deviation is 10,550. The lowest recorded monthly spending was 1,200. That is given here. That's the minimum. And the highest recorded was 46,000. Now this table 1 related information is given. I am going to start with the information for table 2 because there needs to be some narration. And then we need to make sure that this report is readable as well. So I'm going to now start with my table 2. Although the average was $9,034 for the overall sample, during the pre-inflation times. And we don't need dollars again, we already have given the dollar sign. Now you might notice I haven't said the overall sample displayed an average spending of dollars during the pre-inflation times. That is missing here, pre-inflation times, so I'm including it here. So although the average was 9,034 over sample during the pre-inflation times, the biggest average was, or the highest, or the most noticeable spending was noted by players in Trump, Taj Mahal, and then you can give the mean here. Mean is 18,533, and then standard deviation is 14,162. The lowest was by Cowboy Country Casinos. And then you can give once again. I'm going to copy and paste from here. Mean for the Cowboy Country Customer is 3,828. 3,828. Standard deviation is 1,423. Now you don't need to write about everything because why, you have already given a table. So Del Southern Casino information is given. So if someone wants, they can actually go ahead and read that as well. Now here we notice that the average mean has reduced a little bit from 9,000 to 8,000 from the pre-inflation to the post-inflation. So we can write actually that as well. It is also noticed the average spent by casino players across all types of okay. It is also noticed that the average spent by casino players display a slight reduction from the pre-inflation times to post-inflation times. Now, pre-inflation times, that average spending by casino players slight reduction from pre-inflation times. What is our mean? We are going to write that here. 9,034. 9,034 with the standard deviation of 10,550. Post-inflation times, we see a small change, so we are going to write that as well, like this. Now the mean is 8,918, and a standard deviation of 11,314. Okay, like this. So make sure you have some information in between tables. If not, it will greatly reduce the readability of the report. Okay, like this. Further comparison, further descriptive comparisons reveal that similar to pre-inflation times, the highest spending was noted among players in the from Taj Mahal, while the lowest was recorded among the players in cowboy country casinos. Now, once again, this has to be double spaced like this, and we need to put this means and standard deviation. So I'm going to get it here from Taj Mahal. What is the mean for Trump Taj Mahal here? That is 19,200. Standard deviation of 15,099. Lowest was cowboy country casinos, where the average is 3,011 and a standard deviation of 1,470. Okay. Then you would say similar descriptive analysis were carried out to observe average spending done by cowboy uh, country casino players during pre-inflation and post-inflation periods. Now you could say here, as per the results displayed in table 5, the average has the average spending by players in the cowboy country casinos have seen a noticeable reduction from the pre-inflation times to post-inflation times. So we have given this information here. We have done a comparison of average spending done by cowboy country casino players during pre-inflation and post-inflation. As per the result displayed in table 5, the average spending by players in cowboy casinos has seen a noticeable reduction from pre-inflation times to post-inflation times. So let's get this thing right here, and then let's write this. Pre-inflation times, the mean is 3,828 with a standard deviation of 1,423. To post-inflation times, we see a small change of mean 3,011 and then standard deviation of 1,470. Okay, no? So that is also given. And then you could say like this. A similar reduction was noticed among players in Dell's suburban casinos, casino as well, where a noticeable reduction in average spending was noted from pre-inflation times to post-inflation times, like this. I'm going to, again make this double spaced like this, and then I'm going to get this thing right here. I mean, you can be more creative when you write it, but since I just want to show it in a video very quickly, that's why, I'm doing it like this. And you can also maybe combine now, although we have taken information like this, doesn't necessarily mean you need to give information like this. You can cut and paste things as you require now. When you report only the mean and the standard deviation, maybe you can actually take on these components out and actually put the pre-post comparison of the all three in the same table. Maybe when you run the analysis, you are doing it separately, but when you present it, you can further amend the table, edit the table, and put them inside the same table. So you don't need to include narrations in between. So you can do that as well. I didn't do it because it will take more time for me to show it in the video. But I'm just saying it to you now. As an option, you can of course do that as well. So here the mean during the pre-inflation times is 4,742 with a standard deviation of 1,853. The post-inflation mean is 4,542. The standard deviation is 3,950. Although reduction was witnessed in cowboy country casinos and casino and the suburban casino, slight increase or slight can't really say a surge, slight increment was noticed in the average spending of players in the Trump Taj Mahal from the pre-inflation times to post-inflation times. Now once again this has to be double spaced, and then we need descriptive information here, pre-inflation times, post-inflation times. So pre-inflation times Trump Taj Mahal, the average spending was 18,533 with a standard deviation of 14,162. And post-inflation, the mean is 19,200 and the standard deviation is 15,099. Okay. Like this. So we have pretty much narrated all our findings. See, here we have a results section. We have introduced, we have said what our descriptives are going to be. And then we have given our table 1, table 2. Table 1 is pre-inflation average spend for all 36 individuals. This is pre-inflation average spend by degree of flashiness or type of casinos. We have interpreted that as well. And then we have our table 3. Once again, post-inflation average spend, and then the table 4 has post-inflation average spend by the degree of flashiness once again. and then we have narrated it, and then we have a table 5, pre versus post inflation average spending by cowboy country casino players with a simple narration. Table 6, pre versus post inflation average spending by Dell suburban casinos. And then we have our table, okay, this should be table 7, pre versus post inflation average spending by Trump Taj Mahal players. So this is narrated already. So this is it. Now I'm going to quickly change my table numbers here. Table 8, table 9, table 10, table 11, table 12, table 13, table 14, table 15, table 16. Okay. Now we are going to start with our inferential statistics. As per the results obtained in the descriptive statistical analysis, there were noticeable differences recorded among players of different casinos, indicating the degree of flashiness has an impact an impact on the average spending. The same differences were noticed in pre-inflation and post-inflation times. Further differences were noticed among each casino between pre and post inflation times as well. So let's see whether our idea is clear here. As per the results obtained in the descriptive statistical analysis, there were noticeable differences recorded among players of different casinos, indicating the degree of flashiness has an impact on average spending. The same differences were noticed in pre-inflation and post-inflation times for all types of casinos. Further differences were noticed among each casino between pre and post inflation times, indicating inflation also to have an impact on the average spend by individual players, something like this. You can further fine tune this once you have fully completed the report, but just for now, I'm going to keep it like this, okay? So that you understand how exactly we do this. Once we form a particular understanding, then we can go ahead and do further improvement. So hypothesis 1. The degree of flashiness and its impact on spending was spending during pre-inflation times was first assessed by running a one-way ANOVA. Now let's quickly check whether our data is normally distributed or not. Let's go to the respective table, pre-inflation. This is pre-inflation spending for the 3 types of casinos. Apart from one, everything else is generally normally distributed. Yeah, but I think we have violated homogeneity of variance as well, and as a result, we have selected we have not assumed uh, what you call equal variances. That's why there's a degrees of freedom correction. It is 19.2. Okay, so let's write it like this: the degree of flashiness and its impact on spending during pre-inflation times are assessed by running a one-way ANOVA. Although normality is violated for uh, a suburban group, let's get the Shapiro-Wilk value 0.848, and then the p-value is 0.3. Let's take this here, 0.848. All the normality is violated uh, for the Del Southern Casino Group. Distributions indicated to be normally distributed. Avoid country casinos and from Taj Mahal. However, the as per the results of, I mean, we can actually give it here. However, the homogeneity of variances assumption is also violated, and then we can give that as well if df1 is 2, df2 is 33, equals 22.2, and then p-value 0.001. Yet, therefore, one-way ANOVA with unequal variances assumed was run. The results indicate the degree of flashiness to have a statistically significant effect on the average dollars spent by the individual players during the pre-inflation times. And then again, we have to give the F value here, 6.82. Sorry, F, and then degrees of freedom 2, degrees of freedom 1 is 2, degrees of freedom 2 is 19.2, and then the F value is 6.82, and P value is 0.006. Thus, H1 is accepted. I believe this one is accepted, so nothing to worry about that. Post hoc comparisons conducted further revealed the main differences between cowboy country casinos and Trump Taj Mahal to be statistically significant. Now these are pairwise comparisons, so it has to be uh, t-test. So t, the value is negative 3.58. Sorry, we had to give degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is 11.2. 11.2 is negative 3.58, and then p value is 0.011, like this. A similar statistically significant difference was noted among the suburban casino and from Taj Mahal as well. Once again, you can indicate that difference as well. Yeah, that is also a notable difference. So here the t value is once again 11.4. There's casino in Trump. Negative 3.34 is the t value. P value is 0.016, like this. The differences between cowboy country casino and there's suburban casinos, although descriptively different, was not statistically, although descriptively different, failed to indicate any statistical significance, something like this. Okay, so now our hypothesis 1 is done. Now let's move to hypothesis 2. I'm going to just copy and paste here because it's pretty much the same thing. So I don't need to again type the entire thing. I'm going to just make some changes. The degree of flashiness and its impact on spending during post-inflation. Post-inflation times was first time was also assessed by running a one-way ANOVA, although normality is violated for Dell Suburban Casino. Let's see whether Dell's Suburban is violated here. Post-inflation. $848,034 was the pre-violation. Let's see whether I included that during the first time. Yeah, that's right. So then here it should be this one. Yes, it violates for that as well. So very convenient. So I'm going to just include that. Although normality is violated with Dale's suburban casino, 854 now, and p value is 0.042. The distribution is indicated to be normal distributed for cowboy country casinos and Trump Taj Mahal. That is also easy. Okay. Here also the homogeneity of variance is violated. So that is also easy. I am going to write. However, the homogeneity of variance assumption is also violated. If 2 and 33, the F value is 22.8. Therefore, one-way analysis ANOVA with unequal variance assume was run. The results indicated the degree of flashiness to have a statistically significant effect on the average dollars spent by individual players during the post-inflation. Post-inflation times F, this one, degrees of freedom is 2, then 19.5 is the degrees of freedom 2. Degrees of freedom 1 is 2, degrees of freedom 2 is 19.5. F value is 8.82. 8.82 and p value is 0.002. Thus, H2 is accepted like this. And then we can write about our post-hoc comparisons as well, like this. One good thing is our results are pretty similar, so therefore I don't need to do major changes. See, it says post-hoc comparison conducted further revealed the main differences between cowboy country casinos and Trump Taj Mahal to is statistically significant. Yes, cowboy country and Trump Taj Mahal is statistically significant. T value is 11.2, and then negative 3.70, and P value here is 0.009. A similar statistically significant difference was noted among Dell's suburban casinos and Trump Taj Mahal as well. That is here, negative 3.34. P value is 0.016. That's pretty much the same like the previous one. This one has to be negative as well. I think I have missed it. Oh, it's up here. Yeah, so that is also done. The differences between cowboy country casinos and Dell's urban casino, although descriptively different, fail to indicate any statistical significance. Yes, so that is also here. So that is also done. Now we have hypothesis 3. So we can say similarly, differences statistically significant differences in spending between pre-inflation and post-inflation was noted among cowboy country casinos who were paired samples t-test. Now here I have mentioned paired sample t-test, but if you already have mentioned this in your method, then no need to mention it here. Similarly, statistical significant differences in spending between pre-inflation and post-inflation were noted among cowboy country casinos through a paired sample t-test, and then give the values here. So first write t, and then degrees of freedom is 11. Equals t statistic is 2.99, and then p-value is 0.012 with coherence d, that's the effect size, 0.862, like this. I'm going to keep this table here and give my results here. If not, the table will run across 2 pages. That is also not nice. Like this. This is good. A statistically significant difference in spending between pre-inflation and post-inflation were noted among Dell's suburban casinos. Statistical significant spending between pre-inflation and post-inflation noted among was noted among Dell's casinos through another paired sample t-test. Now again give the t here, because see here this is also what do you call statistically significant. Now here degrees of this is actually a Wilcoxon test. So not through a statistical significant difference in spending between pre and was Del Urban casinos through another Wilcoxon the equivalent non-parametric version of paired samples t-test was used here due to Del Suburban casinos violating the assumption of normality. Let's check whether the assumption of normality is violated here. Yes, see, in both the pre and post, it violates. So that is why. Now, if you need, you can write the W and P, but I'm going to just give the table number, table 6, so that a person who want to go through can go to table 6. Okay. Now, let's check how exactly we are going to report Wilcoxon APA reporting. Give me a second. There is a statistically significant difference in the average spent by Bell's suburban casino players from pre-inflation time to post-inflation time. That is 6.0, and then is equal to 0.013, and the effect size was calculated to a point biserial correlation indicating a highly significant effect like this. And biserial, we are going to do it like this. PB is going to be in subscript like this. Now, the only thing I am not too sure here is whether my reporting is right for Wilcoxon. I can't just recall how exactly that is done. I just did a small search, but I'm not too sure about it. But if it is not correct, I will change it in the video editing, but I hope it's all right. So that is done. Here in the previous one, I had to say, thus hypothesis, thus H3 is accepted. So we accepted it now. And then H2 is accepted, H3 is accepted, H4 is also accepted. Okay. Although statistically significant differences in spending were noted for cowboy country casinos and Dell's suburban casinos between pre-inflation and post-inflation. The same difference was not recorded among players in Trump Taj Mahal because our data indicates that it is not statistically significant from pre to post. So we are going to write that once again. This is a t-test. Degrees of freedom is 11. T value is negative 1.68, and then p value is 0.120 with coherence D negative 0.486. It's a moderate effect size. Thus, H5 is rejected. So 4 hypotheses out of 5 is accepted. Now this is our full results section. Now after this would be your discussion section. So I'm going to just type that here as well, so that anyone who reads it would know that this is the discussion section. Now I haven't done any proofreading. This is just the first time first time in the sense I just analyzed the data with you guys, and then I just wrote this step by step while I was recording this video. So I may have committed minor mistakes, which I will probably notice when I edit this video. And probably when you go through it, if I put messages in the bottom line, what it means is the footer of the video. What it means is, I have done some little edits. But I think this is a pretty good way to demonstrate how to go ahead and do the reporting, because I hope I was able to give you a better understanding of how exactly the results section needs to be pretty much aligned. Now, this is not a foolproof results section because I haven't done any editing or so in this document right now. This is my initial draft, but I can further improve this, and then you also can further improve it and make a better result section. As you can see, we have a descriptive section for pre-inflation average spend, pre-inflation average split by the degree of flashiness, post-inflation average spend, post-inflation average spend split by the degree of flashiness, and we all have narration. We have narrations for all of these. Pre versus post-inflation average spending by cowboy country casino, pre versus post-inflation average spending by Dell suburban casino, and then pre and post-inflation average spending by Trump Taj Mahal as well. Now, if you notice, you can pretty much combine this table 2 and table 4 to get the understanding of what we have done in the rest of the tables as well. So that is why I said you can later decide how you are going to further summarize. You don't need to have this much of a bigger results section. And then we have done inferential statistics. We have given how we calculated or how we assessed our hypothesis 1, and then hypothesis 2. Hypothesis 1 and 2 has homogeneity of variance testing, one-way ANOVA, and also a post-hoc test as well. Then we have hypothesis 3, 4, and 5 done through repeated measures t-tests, and we have given effect sizes and all of that as well. So now, if this is the case, you can actually write a very nice discussion section also for something like this. So with this, I'm going to stop my video. I hope I was able to give you some good understanding about how to prepare a report if you have a mixed factorial design. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much for watching this video.